know what stinks about using green screens? Can't use a blue wall anymore. Can't use blue hats anymore. So for now, we're filming down here in Unleash This kitchen slash living room area. Welcome. Dean Gornitis, Unleash This book reviews, bringing you like classic literature reviews and new books that seem like they're going to turn into classic literature reviews, and sometimes some things that are a little different, throw you a little curveball. Like today, where I'm going to be taking a look at 4 of the series in DC Comics New 52. Now, if you are a comic fiend, you're a comic head into comics, you can skip this next little introduction, but for those of you who don't really know much about comics, like me about 6 months ago, DC Comics, rival to Marvel Comics, the two big names, decided to do a complete reboot of their entire franchise about 1 year ago. This involved what they call the New 52, which was taking 52 of their biggest lines and rebooting them from square one. That means Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Catwoman, Aquaman, anything you can think of, started over again fresh at issue number 1. 52 of these things. And I thought, you know, growing up, I never really got into comics because I was always like, I don't really want to start a story at issue number 452 or, you know, 73 or something like that. I want to start at issue number 1. When I got wind that this had happened, I decided to dive in and try out a few. And these are 4 of the ones that have really stuck with me now, and I thought I'd give you guys a little feel. Maybe you'd want to get into them now while it's still a little plausible. You know, they're only on like issue 11 or 12 right now in most series. First one that I really looked into was Batman. Now there's like 9, 10, 11 different spin-offs of Batman in some version with DC Comics right now. There's just Batman, Batman Detective Comics, Batman Incorporated, Catwoman, Batman and Robin. As many different spin-offs as you can think of there are. I decided to do this one, just Batman, because most of the online reviews I had looked at and a few of the comic book dealers that I spoke to told me that it was pretty much the best Batman ones going on right now. This one's written by Scott Snyder, who's pretty well known in the comic book community as far as I know. Like I said, I'm not a huge addict on this, so I don't know all their past history as much as some other people might, and enlighten me on some of the cool stuff that Scott Snyder did that you like. But he is well known in the community, and it makes sense that he takes on sort of the cornerstone of DC Comics with Batman. What was cool with Batman in the past 10 issues or so was they decided to bring a whole new enemy into the world, and it's a cool one too. The Court of Owls, they're called. It's a group of people who have lived in Gotham for a very long time, and they've set up this sort of underground community that kind of rules Gotham City. And now, while this has never come out in a Batman series before, it seems to fit right in, and Scott Snyder does a good job of making it fit into the puzzle really well of all of Gotham lore. Anyways, they are out to assassinate Batman, and they send out some big thugs to do so, accordingly known as Talon. You know, like owls have talons and stuff, so that's all cool and good and everything. And it was a pretty good ride. There's a few of those like comic book moments, superhero moments that I'm not a huge fan of, but I know some people really don't mind them, where you know, this main superhero looks pretty much doomed, in this case Batman, when suddenly they have some weird trapdoor exit that allows them to not die. For example, Batman is about to get his ass kicked, excuse my language, when suddenly he reveals that, oh, he planted a bomb on the bad guy and it's just gonna go off right now, right as he's about to die. Nice escape. That happens a little too much for my taste, but you know, overall it's a good series. What was kind of cool too is they tied it into like a bunch of the other Batman series, maybe like 7 or 8 issues in a crossover called The Night of the Owls, where a bunch of these Talon assassins went out and tried to kill different people throughout the entire Batman series in like Detective Comics and Batman Incorporated and stuff. I didn't really check that out, but I thought that was kind of cool. Cool little interlacing there. I'm definitely going to keep checking that one out. Another one that I've been really into is Aquaman. This one is by Jeff Johns, and I was more into this one in the beginning than I am now. I'll explain that. The first like 5 or 7 issues really focused on Aquaman at first, and then did a little sidetracking with his like wife slash lover Mira, who also possesses water-like powers, and they were cool because it focused on these 2 characters that, let's face it, most of us out there don't really know a whole lot about. You know, these are B-list comic characters. And they didn't go too far out of their reach in setting these adventures. Now, around issue, I want to say like 7 or 8 or something like that, suddenly this comic book world just exploded with like 10 different side characters in a pretty vicious enemy that apparently has some history in the series. At least that's the impression you get. But Jeff Johns does not do a good job of introducing us to these guys and letting us meet them and know them one by one and sort of ease us into the story. Instead, he chucks us in as if we've been reading Aquaman for years and apparently know who all these sidekicks and other little heroes are, and I don't know any of them. And now he's just slowly getting into kind of talking about who they are and what they do, but it just, I'm not feeling it right now. But I am going to stick around with it for a few more issues, because what I've heard is that there's a whole new writing and illustrating team coming out with issue 17. So I think I'm going to stick through until then, see how things change, and see if I keep reading it or not. It's definitely on the fence for me right now. My last two, my biggest ones, favorite ones right now, are Animal Man and Swamp Thing. Now, Animal Man has been written by Jeff Lemire. Really good, deep, dark, moody stuff here. This is not for children, and it's probably not for reading before bed, even if you are a grown adult. I got into it just because all the people online and comic book owners were telling me this is the series to check out, and I can't disagree more. It's kind of like if you take a superhero and throw them in to Tales of the Crypt and make it today instead of the 1950s, how it would turn out. The illustrations in this are so detailed and so beautifully disturbing. And the storyline is great too. There's none of those gimmicky comic book moments like I talked about in Batman. Instead, it's very realistic, and it involves Animal Man, who, in order to get his powers, and his powers are that he can sort of use any of animals' powers whenever he wants. You know, if he needs strength in his punch, he can channel a gorilla. If he needs to be able to fly, he can channel a bird, and etc. He gets these powers from what's called the Red, which is like this like inside of us and around us at all times, you know, one of those like parallel dimension sort of things. The Red, it's like a web of where life is, and that's where he grabs his power from. And what's cool is Swamp Thing connects really well into this too, because Swamp Thing in his series, which is also written by Scott Snyder, which I think is much better written, much more well written than the Batman series, to be honest. Swamp Thing gets his powers from the Green, which is like the same exact thing except with plant life instead of with animal life, which is awesome because what it does is it combines them to have one really bad superhero known as the Rot. And the bad guys that fight both Swamp Thing and Animal Man are from the Rot, which is sort of like the Black, I suppose you could say, where a lot of dead stuff is, stuff like that. This is opening the doors to some great crossovers, a lot like Night of the Owl, but way cooler. Rot World, I believe it's called, where Swamp Thing and Animal Man are like now joining forces, and I'm really getting into that. These two, by far, in my opinion, if you think your tastes match mine overall in books and stuff like that, you have to check these out, even if you're not a comic book fan. Animal Man especially, Swamp Thing just underneath it. The first few issues can be kind of boring as they kind of like explain what's going on and what the Green and what the Red are and stuff, but once you get into this, man, it's a ride. I'm loving it. What comic books have you guys been into? What do you like, the New 52? What should I look at in the past, seeing as how I've just gotten into comic books and I've only been reading like 4 or 5 series? You know, who are some of your favorite artists? Who are some of your favorite authors? What are some graphic novels maybe that I should check out, some collections of some older stuff? You know, I'm new to this comic book world, so if you know a little more than me, please bring it on. Let's go. Let's talk about comics. If you're new to comics, don't be scared either. I was. Let's forget about that. Let's dig right in. You know what I mean? Just finished Robert Bolaño. Man, that's pronounced bad, and you are going to rip me up for that. But By Night in Chile, phenomenal book, and I'm going to be reviewing that soon, along with reading a few other books right now. Alright, I'll see you guys soon, and take care of yourselves. Alright, see ya.